That's what people ask, like, how are you running 3 businesses? And I am, but the agency is really the pillar of that because my team's there.
Now, when I look at Black Friday, it's no longer this like very acute weekend event. It's like this 2-month long event. And I think that the reason that retailers are going earlier and earlier is that, yes, we've conditioned the consumer to shop during that time, but they have fewer dollars. So when you say mindful leadership, what do you actually mean in practice?
Making sure you understand how to get the best out of employees, but not ending there, like actually caring for them.
How are you coaching your customers to make the right investments in AI?
It's really try as many tools as you can, sign up for everything, and figure out which one you want.
Yeah, use the tools, but make sure you find an opportunity to tell your story. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get an opportunity to sit down with some of the brightest minds behind today's iconic, or as I like to say, soon to be iconic brands. Today's guest is a very familiar face to me, and if I'm honest, we have a bit of unfinished business. Joining me today is Johnny Russo. Johnny, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Always a pleasure to see you again.
Yeah, so fellow Montrealer, let's get that out of the way right away. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it. We're supposed to talk about commerce, but the hockey game last night, Montreal Canadiens, was pretty painful to watch. Are you still a Habs fan?
I am a Devils fan. So
You're
we
a Devils fan? Okay.
Yeah. Gideon traded Stefan Richer in 1990 to the Devils, and I've been a Devils fan since.
Oh my God. Okay, that's awesome. Well, the next time the Devils are in town, I'll have to find a way to be in town together. I did a little bit of prep ahead of this, and I knew where you have been for sort of like the last like five plus years, but I had no idea just how far back your career went in Canadian retail. And so if my notes are right here, you spent nearly 20 years in the industry at some of Canada's biggest retailers, Mark's, Canadian Tire, L'Amour Group most recently, some early stops at Buffalo Jeans and Bentley. And so I think there's an awful lot that we can unpack, not just through how the landscape in Canada for retail and commerce has shifted, but what it's like to sort of like build a brand from the ground up. And these days, you've seemingly kept exceptionally busy. You've gone out on your own. You're now the CEO of Zero Lush, a non-alcoholic wine brand. You're also the CEO of Ruggable, which I think is a spin studio in Canada. And then you went even further and you became a partner in High Voltage Digital, which is an agency also helping brands. Did I get all that right?
You did, yeah. I do some professional coaching on the side, and then some coaching for the kids on the ice as well. So it's a busy life. Not in any other way.
And you're an author now as well, Mastering Mindful Leadership: 105 Ways to Become the leader your employees need you to be.
Yes, now I guess we can say that. It's still uncomfortable for me to say author, but we can say that.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep them busy. Well, I mean, those are my notes. There's obviously a lot between the lines there. So maybe take a couple of minutes and tell me your origin story. Like, how did you get into the retail industry 20 years ago?
Yeah, I kind of backed into it, I guess, like many people do. I wanted to be a writer, so I graduated. Yes, and I'm from Montreal. At Concordia University, I graduated in journalism. So I wanted probably to be a newspaper writer at the time. This is dating myself, but that's what it is. And graduated from Concordia and decided to move to Ottawa. Probably, for an English language journalist, thought there was more opportunity there. And within 2 weeks, I needed to pay the rent and I needed something. So I got a marketing job. And after a couple of days, I said, I really like this. And then after 2 weeks, I just started buying like Seth Godin books and J. Conrad Levinson, like guerrilla marketing, and started just self-teaching myself everything on marketing, branding, advertising, PR, business, income statements, like you name it. I just started, probably should have went to business school, I guess, but I did it my own and really fell in love with marketing and pivoted to that. So within those 2 weeks, I made a pivotal decision, I guess, to go into marketing. 2 years later, I came back to Montreal and got a nice job with Pattison, the Pattison Group, which is a huge group in Canada, from cars to food to signage. And then a couple of years later, I got a call from Buffalo Jeans, and they asked me to come on board to manage their e-commerce site. And this is, 15, 16 years ago. So e-commerce was not the same as it was now.
No.
And it wasn't even digital marketing. It was called web marketing at the time.
Yeah, those were the early innings. Like I remember it being even before there was kind of catalog commerce. It looked like an e-commerce site. You could do everything like right up until sort of adding it to your cart and checking out.
Yeah, and like honestly, the marketing that you were doing was SEO
Yeah,
because like
yeah,
it wasn't that big, and there wasn't social media, or it was just starting out anyways. There wasn't paid media as it is now, so it was really SEO focused. But I got to Buffalo, and I had a passion for retail. I loved apparel because I loved fashion. And then this kind of combined technology into that. I said, I am e-commerce. So I did that pivot into marketing. And then I said, here's the industry I want to be in, and found my niche in retail. So that was like another, I guess, chasm in my career. And then the next one was when the Canadian Tire Group called me and said, hey, we have an opportunity here. And I said, in my head, I'm thinking it's Toronto. And they said, we want you to move to Calgary to
wow,
run digital at Marks and Lakekeeper and, Sport Check. The
yeah,
whole group of really was to focus on Marks and Lakekeeper. Marks is a $1.3 billion brand, 300 plus stores. It's an icon in Canada. And so I moved to Calgary in 2016 and stayed there for 4 years. Loved my opportunity there. Loved everything there. Canadian Tire taught me so much. It was a public company, right? So I've worked for family businesses, private equity backed brands, and now I got the chance with public business, public company. So really enjoyed that time, and then had two small kids. So we came back to Montreal and got a job basically with a wholesaler and had to transform their business digitally.
yeah,
They wanted after consumer, they wanted a growth in that division. They had multiple brands. So basically, I took two mandates. One was for a sleepwear company, and then the last of which was for an underwear basics company. And very similar, where they have a huge license business from Disney to Fruit of the Loom. I'm merging two companies right now, but you get the point. So I got to work with like 40 licenses, and then also both companies diversified and bought their own brands or developed their own brands. So
I worked
I
on
mean,
one of those brands.
yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah,
And if you see my Shopify access, I mean, I have like 28 sites. It's
yeah,
like, it's wild because they still help out in some ways. So, that's kind of my story. And along the way, I was traveling a lot from Montreal to Calgary on the planes. I didn't want to just waste it watching Netflix and Narcos at the time. So I said, I'm going to watch 2 hours of Netflix and I'm going to write for 2 hours.
yeah.
Going back to the passion of journalism. And I actually started writing on digital transformation. And a month later, I'm like, this is going to be obsolete by the time I publish. And I just had this passion for helping people and leadership, and decided to turn that into a leadership book, and found an editor, and that editor led me to a Canadian publisher. And lo and behold, we published it a couple of years ago.
I mean, good for you. I think that's amazing. And there's a lot of these names that when I was running an agency in Montreal, we had an opportunity to work with, and I look back on that time really fondly, and I think like those brands continue to do an awful lot right. But yeah, those were sort of exciting times. The plane thing, I'm just curious, did you write first and then your reward was watching Netflix, or were you disciplined enough to watch your 2 hours and then bust out the laptop and start the writing?
Yeah, it's a great question because like at the time, now I think they're more lenient, but it was like you couldn't have like any electronics on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I would actually read for the first 20 minutes. I would
Okay.
read a book, and sometimes the book leads me to notes. So I would write notes in my
Yeah.
notes app. And then I would do 1 hour, I would interchange. So I would write for an hour, watch Netflix for an hour, write for an hour, and then watch Netflix for an hour. Usually it's about a 4 hour and 15-minute flight. So it got me in there.
Yeah, if all goes well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question though. It's very hard for me to write continuously for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'm good for an hour. and then I
Yeah, I
need a
think it's
break.
like it's a matter of getting into the zone. Like I spend a bunch of time on a plane. I think like I've been on 70 flights so far this year, and we still have a couple weeks left in December. What works for me is when I get on the plane is I have the list of things that I'm going to do. And I was like, I'll write it down in notes. I'm like, I'm going to get through these three things on the plane, and once I get through those three things, then like I give myself permission to either read something or watch something. If I get sucked into watching right away, and I tell my daughter this all the time, it's really hard to sort of transition to something that is actually thoughtful. So yeah, just curious, like for someone that does as much as you do, what some of those little hacks are. If I were to look you up today on LinkedIn, I see that you're still the chief digital officer at Lemur, but in reality, I mean, as you've just told us, you've gone more portfolio. So now you're working across all of these different initiatives. Most of which your CEO. Um, Over your career, have you developed, besides the sort of read then watch hack, like some other sort of like productivity hacks that allow you to be effective across these different initiatives?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Can I reach for something? So I mean, maybe people are listening to this on Apple and maybe don't have the video. Who knows? But uh, Life Purpose Playbook.
Okay.
It's a fantastic book by Judy Machado Duke or Duque. She's Canadian. I
Yeah.
believe she lives in Elizabeth, but she's actually in my book. I got permission to use a couple of pages. This is a 6-month planner,
Wow.
and there's a couple of blank pages, which I asked her to add more. But you know, Steve Jobs and some others would say, I don't want to waste time getting dressed. I have my black shirts and I wear the same thing. Right? You've heard that adage before. Zuckerberg's like
This
that
is
too.
I had my travel uniform. It, like I barely ever unpack. I don't even think about it anymore. I know exactly what's going to go in the suitcase. Doesn't matter where I'm going to go.
So I'm not like that, and I'm going on travel vacation with the fam. I mean, there's clothes everywhere. We have a different outfit for different. I'm not like things like books to read. I know my next 7 books, 8 books. I have 30 books that I want to read next year, and I'm going to go down the order, right? And I have
Hmm.
some leisure ones, mostly personal development, a lot of marketing, and then I,
Yep.
I adapt a couple of sports books. I'm allowed 2 sports books. And this has my vision board. This has my life intention. This has my life purpose. It has my 2-year plan. It has my daily, weekly, and monthly goals, and they're all connected. And, if I don't do all the things I need to do in a week, I go on to the next one. So, 80 to 90% of the time I'm pretty efficient. I talk about that a bit in my book, but this is my go-to, and I have not switched digital. I do not do that type of planning digitally.
Yeah.
I still and it lasts 6 months and I recreate it. And even the vision board, which doesn't change too often, I have a chance to relook at it every 6 months and input it. So it runs from January to June and July to December,
I,
and
I
that
I love
keeps
that.
focus. Yeah.
I'm similar in that I have notebooks with me everywhere. And I'm kind of sort of analog in that way, and I like to take notes. I think better that way, and so I will eventually transcribe it to digital. Everything is gone digitally these days, but it's hard for me to go like right to that. I like to write. I like to scratch it out. I like to look at it again. Um, so yeah, that's super helpful, and it strikes me that there's an awful lot of structure. It would seem to how you're doing this. You're taking the thinking off the table in terms of like, oh, what's the next book I'm going to read? No, I've already sort of planned this out. Is that one of the things that allows you to be creative? Is that you have these guardrails that are in place, or these constraints, or this planning that has been done, and then sort of like within the lines, it allows you to be creative across this portfolio?
Yeah. I think for me, if I had a superpower, I think it's efficiency. Just because some people are like very science based and like science comes naturally for them, right? And that's not me. But there are certain things in business and digital in leadership that come really naturally to me. And sometimes that's also quick. So I can get to the bottom of the problem quicker than some people. And I think that really helps me. So yeah, I use all these tools, and I'm quite self-aware of what I need to work on, and it's helped me too, right, over the years, right? So um I just kind of put it all together, and for me it's not like there's an end goal here. It's like, how do I get better every year? Like, I'll give you an example. Uh, Accounting wasn't my strong suit, right? So I spent like 3 months of the 12 saying, you know what, I'm going to read up on accounting. I'm going to know all about P&L statements. I'm going to look at companies that, post them public, like public companies that post them, and really learn about that. It wasn't part of my job, and maybe I would spend an hour a month on some of those income statements, now a lot more, but
Yep.
it really helps. This is, I'm talking about 15 years ago, but it helps me now because I'm running P&Ls for several companies, including my own. So it's kind of natural. So
Yeah.
I don't get stuck because I have some of these frameworks or templates, right? If you say create a marketing budget, I have all the templates I need. I'm plugging in numbers and the strategies and what are the pillars throughout. And I kind of bring this to the clients that we lead too, and try to help them be more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, efficiency, creativity, the learning piece, I think is really huge for me as well. Well, let's talk about some of those customers. So recently, and it really sort of like I think about your whole career arc, you're not someone who's afraid of making bets, whether it's like getting on a plane and moving your life to the west of Canada to take on a role. And now when I think about the bets, it looks like you've made sort of three big bets. There's Zero Lush, which I want to learn more about. There's rush cycle, and then there's high voltage. On the surface, these all seem like different bets, but is there a common thread that made it easy for you to say yes to them all simultaneously?
Oh, that's a great question because that's what people ask, like, how are you running three businesses? And I am, but the agency is really the pillar of that because my team's there.
Okay.
And no, I cannot do this alone, right?
Yeah.
I can't, nor do I want to. Yes, I would have gone on my own a long time ago. And for two of those businesses, my brother's a partner. And for the other one, I have two partners on the agency side. We have two partners that had their own agency and understand how to build agencies. So yeah, they tie in, right? Like a lot of the marketing for Rush Cycle, let's say, goes through the agency, working with similar team members that I've worked with at Lemoore, right? Because that Lemoore business on the brand side and direct to consumer is now with high voltage. So similar team members, they understand the brands and the business. And that's how we get to go faster because I always use the analogy of like, it doesn't take us enough words we don't need a lot of words to explain what we want,
Yeah.
right? Have a meeting later today and it's going to be focused on like email and CRM. And I've been working with, someone in email for about 4 or 5 years. She's been an employee. And all I needed to tell her was like 4 words. And she understood. I was asking for like a report she was going to show.
Yeah.
And she understood what I meant, right? But it wasn't like a huge back and forth of like 17 minutes or anything. It was 3 words. She understood what I was getting at. So they kind of do cross. But yeah, zero less. So I'm funny enough, I'm a big wine advocate. I love wine. I love the wine industry and never worked in it, but I just have a passion for wine. And then, we're looking for companies to purchase. We didn't want to start our own brand or company. We wanted to acquire. And that's one thing that we had as a tenet to doing this entrepreneurial thing, me and my brother. And so we found this lovely brand, Zero Lush. So it was operated from Victoria, BC.
Okay.
Had all wheels we wanted. The wine's from Spain. So the red is a Tempranillo grape.
Yep.
And the is based at Etienne.
Okay.
And then we have, so we have 5 different varietals and 6 SKUs. So we have a sparkling rosé made in a normal bottle, and then we have one in a small bottle, like a 250 ml. We have red, white, sparkling white, and we have both rosé and sparkling rosé. And yeah, it's like a passion project for us, and it's so far it's been organic. So we have a direct to consumer. We have a website, a Shopify site, and then we sell predominantly through in BC, high-end, hotels, a lot of liquor stores, high-end restaurants, golf courses. So there's a market there, and BC has been probably the leader in Canada for the non-alcoholic stuff, the options that they wanted.
Yep.
And
I can see that.
growing. Yeah, you can see like if you look at a menu and if you go to BC, you have like 20 options of non-alcoholic beer or wine,
Yeah.
and then Ontario like 5 and Quebec
And
is
Quebec's like 1. Yeah. Yeah.
So we see it. It's a matter of time before that grows. So we're kind of guiding our influencer strategy and who we're going to work with and partner with. And then the Rush Cycle, yeah, we own the master franchise, so we don't own any of the studios. It wasn't something we wanted to do, but to run the master franchise and grow something across Canada is something that we're very interested in. We were on Dragon's Den. We filmed in May We actually filmed on Mother's Day, and then it was broadcast in September. So we're on Dragon's Den. So some good hype coming out of that. We're looking for growth probably in Ontario and Western Canada right now. So we're looking for some partners in those territories. And then the agency is fun. Like we get to work with some amazing brands. We have an office in Europe and an office in Canada, and we have a lot of U.S. business there. And I know right now Canada, U.S. and all those relations, like the U.S. business is strong right now. But in terms of if we're going to talk about like Canadian economy, I think to classify a consumer in Canada right now, it's cautious.
Yeah,
a cautious. That's what we're calling them in our personas right now. For some of that is like cautious. But U.S. trade looks good. Europe's pretty strong right now. But in Canada, it's kind of cautious right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if you've seen some of the early Black Friday numbers for 2025. I do think that there was a cautiousness in the U.S. market too. It's sort of interesting, and we've seen this. Like I've been in like I said, commerce for 30 years, and now when I look at Black Friday, it's no longer this like very acute weekend event. It's like this 2-month long event, and I think that the reason that retailers are going earlier and earlier is that yes, we've conditioned the consumer to shop during that time, but they have fewer dollars. And so they're like cautious or thoughtful. I think it's like there's a certain amount that I'm going to spend. It goes back to this, like they've got some constraints, and I'm going to allocate my dollars here and I'm going to allocate my dollars there. And when those dollars are gone, those dollars are gone. It doesn't matter how compelling the offer is or how much I love the brand. I'm just not going to spend right now. And I do think, I spent a bunch of time in Canada as well. I like the word cautious, but I have also seen it south of the border where I am now. And I don't know across some of the brands you're working with, if that's a similar pattern that you're seeing.
It's interesting. Like we, on the budget side, just to give you an example, right? If something's going really well, and like you said, like some of these sales start November 3rd, they're starting so early. But
October 15th, I was starting to get some of these things, like get ahead of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But like what we're seeing is that an American or a brand in the US or a team in the US, if they're going well and there's, an ask for more budget or saying, hey, do you want to increase budget by 25% because we think we can hit your, like more than exceed your goals?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. And in Canada, there's trepidation.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to go up the ladder. I got to go up the chain. And even if you're talking to the owner, there's some skepticism, like, can you guarantee this?
Yeah.
All we can do is look
slow.
at.
That's too slow. Like by then those dollars might be gone. And it's like, so how do you have enough trust in the data? And then how do you establish enough trust with the relationship within the business or within the customer to sort of say, like, we know, like, it goes back to this notion of bets. How do you make that strategic bet when you've got like that solid data and the 20, 30 years of experience to know, and you're intuitively in your gut, like, this is the time. This is the moment that we need to invest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, then I want to make sure that we leave enough time to talk about the book, and sort of like leading up to this, you're across all of these organizations. I understand why now you're sort of saying the agency is the pillar. It's got to be really nice to be able to have an agency that can not only work across your businesses, but give you insight to help out other businesses. And also, I would imagine, afford you a ton of opportunity to lead. And that's maybe why you literally wrote the book on it. I covered it at the beginning, but the title is Mastering Mindful Leadership, 105 Ways to Become the Leader Your Employees Need You to Be. So when you say mindful leadership, what do you actually mean in practice? Can you give us an example or two of how that shows up across the portfolio of businesses that you're leading?
Yeah, and by the way, this is the book. It's
awesome.
Easy read. You can get it at Amazon. Mindfulness to me is, there's this old school approach to leadership, and I think if you look at sports coaching, where it was very rough, it was very hard, it was very dictator led, and it worked, right, for a time.
Yeah.
And And then we had this wave, and this is before COVID, right? It's not the COVID wave I'm talking about. Just we had this wave of like maybe a new voice needs to be heard, new leaders need to be heard, women coming up in leadership, right? Different ethnicities on your team and all that to consider. And there's a different approach for everybody. And I think that's what it comes down to is like, if you have a team of 20, you have certain core values that the whole team must be accountable for, and you hold them accountable for. That's how culture is built. But you probably want to treat each one a bit different in how you communicate with them, how you work with them. One of the things that I do with my employees is a personal development plan. And everyone's a bit different. And what I also try to include in those, usually you have like 4 core areas you're going to work with in the next 12 months. But I also want some life. That's what I call like a personal development plan. There's some life goals there. If someone wants to get back into fitness because they're not happy with where they are, then that's a big thing because that's going to lead to success. That's going to lead to drive. That's going to lead to more energy for work and other things. So it's kind of all related. So mindfulness for me is like making sure you understand how to get the best out of employees, but not ending there, like actually caring for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it doesn't mean you're not going to let people go or there's not a right fit. But if you are, and I've heard some horror stories recently where, it's by a text or by, HR is not in the room, like that type of stuff. It's like, no, you have to also be mindful when you let someone go or in that situation. Not always positive, but there's a way and an approach to do it. And a lot of that is sensory and communication.
Yeah, I used to talk early on in my career about the conflation of nice and kind. And we're Canadian and sort of like nice is our brand. But sometimes when you're dealing with your team, being kind is more important. And being kind sometimes means like saying the hard things and just being really, really direct. And if that means moving people on or making sure that they get the feedback that they need to be able to have the tools to continue to grow. It's not an easy thing to get right, certainly early on or your first time sort of being a manager.
100%. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, I've had to let people go in my career. And 90% of the time, and it's not 90 people, but 90% of the time, I still talk to them. I still have lunch with them. I still recommend them.
Yep.
I might even work with them again. I keep that relationship going because it was just that fit at that time. And they do it. And they weren't surprised by it because we've had conversations leading up to that. But I make sure that I do keep in touch with a lot of them.
I think that's the key is to not have people feel surprised. And sometimes it takes time. But yeah, I think like it's nice to be able to reflect back on that and sort of say like, we went through this tough moment, but we're writing another chapter together. Or there's a better fit for you over here. And I am happy to be a reference for you. I think that's one of these things that just comes with time and maturity. I do need to transition us, unfortunately, to AI. And I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about this before we wrap up here. The more I think that things change, as I unpack them, it sort of feels like things aren't changing all that much. And so you talked about at the beginning of your career, when you were getting started in e-commerce, marketing was really SEO. Now, obviously, there's an awful lot of emphasis on like how SEO is becoming more us optimizing our content for agents. And I'm seeing it in the data, more and more traffic is landing on sites that is coming from searches that were initiated in something like ChatGPT, as opposed to the traditional SEO. And so across your businesses, I want to ask, this is sort of a 2-part question, how you're coaching your teams to use AI, but then also how you're consulting your customers to make the right investments at this moment. And I think we can keep it specific if you want to kind of the evolution of SEO, but really, I want to hear from you. How are you coaching your customers to make the right investments in AI?
Yeah, on the team one, it's really try as many tools as you can. Line up for everything and figure out which one you want, right? Like we have more research-minded individuals, we have more content-minded individuals, we have more strategy-minded individuals, lead gen, that type of stuff. So everyone's got their preferences, but that's really the goal. It's just try it and do it. and see how far you can take it. But there's still a human element, in what we do. And there has to be, and there should be. And media buying is one of those things where like there's a whole pundit saying it will be completely replaced by AI, and maybe it will, and maybe it won't. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a great thing to celebrate either, to say, I'm running my business fully on AI.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of it, but at the end of the day, is that what, like, it's the self-driving car example, right? Like, do you want a self-driving car all the time? I don't know.
Sometimes, like if I needed to get from Edmonton to Calgary, there's not a lot to see there. Like, drive me. But if I'm driving up the coast, I want to have my hands on the wheel. And I think, like, I bring that back to commerce all the time. I don't want someone doing all of the shopping for me. Like, I love getting to know new brands. I use this example all the time of when I order from a brand that I love and the box arrives at my front door, I knock the Amazon boxes out of the way because I don't even know what's in those, but I'm really excited to tear open that box and the brand that I love. And like, that is a story as old as time. And I don't want that to go away. And I think the same thing about our internal organizations too. I encourage my team to use AI to give us superpowers, to do the thing that we really love to do and that we're great at doing, make it even easier for us to get to deliver that level of excellence. And that means sometimes getting rid of the things that are routine, and that we don't necessarily need to be the ones making all of those investments. And so I sort of like maybe tying a bow around this for coaching and given your experience and the teams that you're running, and you talked an awful lot about how you learn, which is somewhat analog. Today we're in this sort of like weird moment where we know AI is this huge opportunity, but for folks that are maybe earlier in their career, I'm seeing it as a source of anxiety as well. And so, maybe sort of like a final thought here, how do you think about your responsibility as a leader to make sure that your team is learning the right way, using these tools the right way, and then sort of like sharing that back with their colleagues so that we move away from anxiety and we lean all the way into opportunity?
Even as students, it's easy to go on a search bar and ChatGPT everything, right? Do you understand the content?
Yeah.
And I don't care how good you are at AI. If you're interviewing, you have to know your stuff. You can memorize all you want, but a good viewer will read through it. And same for a marketing presentation. So I get a lot of marketing presentations.
Yeah.
And you know what I do? I spend a couple of minutes before each one saying, is this AI or not?
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, I don't even know if I have a problem or not with that, if it's all AI or not. And it doesn't bother me in the end. Like, I'll figure it out, but I'm going to ask some questions and deep dive, and I'll know right away if you know your stuff or not, whether it's vendor, a tech firm, whatever it is. And so I'm cautious about that, right? Like, use it as like a cheat sheet, but make sure right? If something's saying, here are the marketing campaigns I would recommend to a client, right? Let's say on the agency side. And they say, yeah, sure, go for it. And you don't know how to run those marketing campaigns, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So the ball has to be there. And on the customer side, it forces you to be really good, like as a client, I should say, as a brand. Because Gemini, just as an example, like I did it the other day, we were talking about comfort for a brand, and I did the search, and Gemini uncovered some pages that are still published on the site, but not really reachable in the ad menu. And I'm like, by the way, here's like all the content you used to have like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's better than what you have now. But AI is like forcing you to like be on your game with everything, because it's gonna crawl everything and be out there and show you the good and the bad.
Yeah, it forces you to be on your game. I think it is a tool, but it's I'm going to repeat what I said before. It, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You still have to know the content. You still have to know your customer. You still have to check your work. You still have to have this, I think, in order to be successful, this insatiable appetite to learn. And it's never been easier to learn, But like, you've got to be super curious about the output sometimes. And let me read through this. Let me make sure that there's no slop in this. Let me make sure that I can represent this work. I think that these are incredibly powerful tools as thought partners, but I still want to encourage every single person on my team to be the one doing the thinking. There's a pride of authorship here where these are your ideas and you have checked the work and you ultimately stand behind it. And that's the same advice that I give brands too. Like, you just mentioned it. Your content is going to be out there and it is going to be found. And that is going to be a reflection of how your current customers or your prospect customers are going to think about you. And these things matter. So it's not a competition to who can create the most content. Everyone can create content now. It's never been easier. How do we make sure that content is really resonant? I think that's the name of the game. It's always been the name of the game. And sometimes I think it's helpful to just stop for a second and remind people.
Yeah. And honestly, like an analogy of that is like like going on a date, right? And you're like, you know what? I'm not good at like conversation. Like, you know what? Use AI for some thought starter questions.
Yeah.
But what I would say, don't use them for the answers of what you should see, right? Like,
yes.
Like that's you need both. It's like, I'm introvert. I can't come up with the questions. Great. Use AI for some of those thought starters, but she or he wants to hear your story, right? And it's just like in business, like use this as a starting point. But at the end of the day, if you're helping a brand, like they want your input too, right? It's not just reading the screen.
Yeah, use the tools, but make sure you find an opportunity to tell your story. That's probably a great place for us to wrap up. Johnny, I really sincerely appreciate you coming on the pod and telling us your story. I like that we didn't get too much into the weeds talking about marketing tactics, but instead sort of like talked about leadership and how you can be efficient and how you can really be a successful leader across a number of exciting initiatives. Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for the conversation. Have a super safe trip, and I'd love to have you back on soon.
We'll do it. I'm sure we'll meet up in Vegas like we do every year.
Yes. I'll see you in Vegas.